Lee Simon always picks topics that are either controversial or of universal interest. It is his hope that all of us have experience with this topic and will bring it to a lively and will bring to it a lively discussion. To the extent that it is possible, his talk today will be gender neutral. Lee, take it away.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm 90. I've been thinking about sex since I was 14. That gives me some credibility to talk here. Two things. I have it on really extremely good authority that sex is here to stay. Also, that sex is not dirty, it's biology. Mankind has been grappling with sexuality issues since the days of the cavemen and women. It's testosterone and hormones versus morals, taboos, and laws. Probably every theory has been tried with a wide variety of approaches. There are no universal answers. We don't even have the right questions. The answer is always contained in the question. The answer is always contained in the question. We need better questions. Some cultures have succeeded more than others, but none have really solved the problem. So why is it a problem? Because there is a built-in contradiction between instinct and our social beingness. Other animals don't seem to have this problem, but them it's instinct and habit totally. With them, there's no need for social control, for morals, for taboos, for laws, for norms. They have built-in instinctual controls. But we humans do need all of them, or else there would be social chaos. In many ways, we still do have sexual social chaos. In spite of our having all of those mechanisms of social control. Sex is sometimes socially constructive and sometimes socially destructive, but it's always biologically necessary to propagate the species. So is humanity crazed? Well, we have this ultra strong instinct on the one hand, and the need to control it, regulate it, manage it, repress it on the other hand. If there was only one man on earth and many women, mankind could survive. But if there was only one woman and many men, mankind would not survive. The men would go to war against each other all the time, and there would not be enough propagation to control famine, natural disaster, and testosterone macho. The men, driven by the instinct to have sex for species survival, would probably hack each other to death until only one guy was left standing. Testosterone is both our boon and our bane. Without it, we perish. With it, we continuously need to control it, but controlling it is not necessarily repressing it. Let us now leave biology and talk about the social sciences. Taboos are present in all societies. There are 5 cultural taboos that are common to every known human culture. They are murder, harmful cheating, harmful lying, stealing, and incest. The only one of those 5 that has to do with sexuality directly is incest. I think, as Freud says, the incest taboo is rooted in the father's jealousy of the sexual prowess of the son, or conversely, the father's sexual attraction to the daughter. There are other sexual taboos that are probably not universal, that are designed to control human sexuality. For example, it is taboo to have sex with a minor. It is taboo to have sex with your brother or sister. It is taboo to have unprotected sex in modern cultures. It's taboo to abort a fetus if you think if that's murder. It is taboo to steal someone else's child. It is taboo to kill a female instant because it's not a male. It's taboo to have sex with an animal. All these are directly or indirectly sexual taboos. Yet to one degree or another, they are all taboos that are broken. In some cultures more, in some cultures less. I think this is because obviously often the sexual instinct is stronger than the taboo. In authoritarian societies of one kind or another, political or religious, fear of retribution dampers down the desire to break the taboo to a greater degree. It is interesting that all authoritarian cultures and subcultures, whether religious or political, repress sexuality. The religious ones do it because they believe that people must keep their attention on spiritual things only all the time. So no sexual hanky-panky, no drugs. They conveniently forget that the wine they drink is the most universal drug of all drugs. They also fail to see that nature, which includes instincts, can also be spiritual. The extremist political subcultures want their followers to keep their attention on the noble cause for which they struggle, so no sexual hanky-panky, no drugs. In the late 1960s, the hippie movement called the sexual freedom from the mores and norms of our culture. The instinct for procreation toppled and continues to topple the restrictive, puritanical, Victorian norms. The social control of sexuality of the youth broke down to a large degree. This was evidenced by the call for free love. Is this the sexual instinct demanding its place? That type of promiscuity created as many problems as it solved, and the backlash to it is still going on. The forces of repression are panicked. They see it as a loss of control, a loss of repression of the instinct. And it is just that. So what's the problem? The forces of repression want to repress sexuality via anti-gay sex and anti-unmarried sex, and they also want to ban family planning, birth control, and abortion. I think that unconsciously they want to ban sex itself. In this, they do themselves and others great harm. Why? Because what you repress does not go away. It's still there under the surface, creating stress. All of the energy that is used to repress sex, both personally and societally, will seek an outlet of one kind or another. If the outlet is not sexual, it will manifest as one form or another of displacement or sublimation. Here are two definitions of replacement and sublimation by Will and Sue Daniels. Displacement is taking out unconscious, unacceptable feelings on someone or something less threatening than the person or thing that caused them. For example, yelling at your spouse when you get home instead of at your boss when he criticized you earlier. Sublimation is transforming unacceptable urges into acceptable or productive activities such as taking out aggression playing football instead of just picking fights with people. Both can be a deflection of sexual instincts into non-sexual activity. For example, the instinct can be sublimated into asceticism, or into greed and acquisition, or it can be sublimated into doing dangerous, high-risk things, or into compulsive behavior of one kind or another, and so on. If the instinct is not sublimated, then the instinct will be displaced in response to the repression. The stress occasioned by the repression will be transferred to a societally acceptable outlet for the stress, including war. If a person is sexually repressed, and we all are to some degree or other, it can be displaced into creativity, in the arts, or into compulsively helping other people, or into achieving excellence, or religious fanaticism, and so on. Is that it? Are we stuck with either repression or sublimation or displacement? If we assume that repression is not good, then we are stuck with the alternatives, which are socially acceptable, but not nearly as gratifying as not repressing the sex in the first place. But it may not be sublimated or displaced into a socially acceptable format. It may go to rape and or other physical violence or war. One view is that war is sexual repression let loose. We know that soldiers in combat commit rape of enemy women a lot. This is a catch-22. As I see it, the best approach is what is termed the middle path. Moderation in all things. We need to have some repression, but not too much. The problem is, who is going to decide how much is too much? The challenge has now become a political problem on a spectrum. Some social institutions, like religions, will want to draw the line way over on the side of repression. There are other groups who will wish to draw the line way over toward no repression, like the man-boy society. Are we advanced enough to have the middle path dominate the political process? It does not seem to be the case these days. The center is not holding. Perhaps one approach would be to differentiate sexuality from sensuality. Sexuality is tied to the instinct. I'm not sure that sensuality is. Perhaps we are getting sensuality, we are seeing sensuality as sexual because we repress sexuality so much. Perhaps we are seeing sensuality as sexual because we repress sexuality so much. To put a high value on sensuality might reduce our need to repress sexuality. We now come to the most egregious form of sexuality, which is rape. The motive may be power and control, but even then, rape is a sexual act. The issue of rape, it's a worldwide problem. Many countries' laws against sexual assault are insufficient, inconsistent, or not regularly enforced. This can leave the victim of rape convinced that getting law enforcement involved will do no good, and in some cases could actually make things worse instead of better. Many cases are not reported at all. For example, in the US, only roughly 8% of rapists are prosecuted. 8%. And only 3% of rapists go to prison. 97% of rapists walk free. So what is rape? How is it defined? Oh, everybody knows what rape is. Hold on, hold on. Some countries consider any non-consensual sex to be rape. Other countries classify a sexual assault as rape only when it exceeds a certain threshold of violence. Some countries acknowledge spousal rape as rape, others do not. Some countries confine the definition of rape to forced vaginal penetration during sexual intercourse only. Others consider any unwarranted penetration of any body part to be rape. Thus, we can see that rape is not so easily defined. Furthermore, it is a tendency in many countries to blame the victim, not the perpetrator. Here are some facts. In the US, 70% of rapes are committed by someone the victim knows. While the frequency of rape in the US varies from state to state, it averages out to one rape every 1 to 2 minutes. Women ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape or sexual assault. 95% of women who are raped experience symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder during the 2 weeks following the rape. 30% of those PTSD cases last at least 9 months. 1/3 of women who are raped contemplate suicide. A high percentage of rape victims experiencing ongoing professional and/or emotional issues as a result of the attack. While the majority of sexual assault victims are female, 80% of juveniles and 90% of adults, males around the world also experience sexual harassment, sexual assault, and even rape every day. Transgender people are those with disabilities. They're twice as likely to be victims of sexual assault or rape. Have we reached the middle path? Pornography is legal in many countries. Prohibition of prostitution is legal in some states and in some countries. Using sex in advertising is legal. Stopping the natural result of sex via abortion is legal some places, not others. We are pulled from the middle path in both directions, depending on where in the world we're talking about. So it is then the case. Is it then the case that we are stuck with the problem as it is now? Stuck forever? So we have the right to, do we have the right to sell our definition of rape to everyone else in America and the world? We are prone to think that our answers are the only right answers. Teen sex in the US is down in the last couple of decades. How can this be? That's a good question. About 40% of American high school kids have never had sexual intercourse, an increase of over 15% since the early 1990s. The historic increase is one of the findings in the 2019 iteration of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Close examination reveals that most teens are having less sex and delaying sex longer. Teen sexual intercourse has declined across racial groups, although for some more than others. In particular, Black high schoolers are much less likely ever to have had sex, dropping from 81.5% in 1991 to 42.3% today. Statistically, indistinguishable from both white and Hispanic students. And there goes the stereotype. As psychologist Jean Twenge has documented, contemporary teens not only have less sex but also drink alcohol and then drive less than they did before? Is it because the fear of teen pregnancy has increased in the teens? Is it because repression is again on the rise in religious communities? Would we be selling testosterone boosters on TV to millions of men if testosterone levels were not going down? Is all this because we have better sex education in the schools? Is it because the procreative instinct has diminished in strength? Has television damped down our libidos? Has the use of drugs, which has increased dramatically over the last half century, diminished our libidos? We know that in the last 75 years or so, male sperm count is down 50%. It's the battle of sperm count versus testosterone. The research on this sperm count focused on men in North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, and was based on 185 studies of over 40,000 individuals. It found an overall sperm count decline of 50 to 60% over the previous 4 decades and suggested the decline may continue. So many questions with no definitive answers. Here's another one. Has the increase of easy availability of birth control and abortion, at least until this decade, had a profound effect on this whole topic? Is this a society moral issue, or is it a legal issue? Or is it an individual person issue that the government should not tamper with? It's my view that not only are there no easy answers to all these questions, there may not be any answer. It may be the case that the instinct for procreation will trump all the questions and all the laws. So what can we come away with from all this? 2 things. First, we must be sure we are asking the right questions to get the right answers. Secondly, we must not ever assume that our culture's answers are the only correct answers. We're all for global diversity, but are we really? If we do both of those, ask the right questions and not assume that our answers are the only right answers, we may be able to at least mitigate the impact of the sexual instinct, which is here to stay. Thank you.